Unmute कर.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hello to my audience on YouTube and Clat Possible students who've joined us from different centers across India. This is Abhishek Thakur, and I'm going live from the Lucknow headquarters of Clat Possible. And sorry for the slight delay in starting the session. The different centers in the city and students took some time to reach the center. Anyway, I got to spend some initial 35 minutes with the students. Got to spend some initial 35 minutes with the students. And I think I'm ready for the first impressions at least. And obviously, after the first impression session, you will have full-fledged analysis sessions and the general overview and the expected cutoff for CLAD 2022. So before I begin my session, I would want to request all my center managers to turn on the camera. I will just give you in a nutshell, I'll just tell you what exactly we'd be doing for the next couple of hours, in fact, 3 to 4 hours. This is the first impression session. You've just written the paper, you've just come out of the center. A lot of people have already joined me on YouTube. And even if you watch this video later, the first thing that bothers us the most, more than anything else, once we're done with the paper and when we come back home, the first thing that bothers us is, was I the only one facing all these troubles or facing all these problems? Am I the only person in the boat? Or do we have other people in the boat as well? Do we have other people who've gone through similar problems? Was this question something that I found particularly tricky, or was this a tricky question in general? Was this section that I particularly struggled with? I struggled in isolation, or did aspirants across the country struggle with that section as well? So this is the first thing that by far haunts us the most once we are done with the paper, and which is why we conduct these first impression sessions, which, in summary, pretty much tell you that no, you were not alone, all right? Because the sentiments of students is pretty much the same. The sentiments of students is pretty much unanimous when it comes to the general difficulty, or, how strange or how easy they found a particular section. So for this session today, I will be joined by my Clat Possible students from different centers. We have students from the Patna Center, the Lucknow Center, Chandigarh Center, Ranchi Center, Kanpur Center, Mumbai Center, Delhi Center, the Pitampura Center. So we have different students, and we will be beginning with the feedback, live feedback that the students will have to, that the students will give to all those who are attending this session. Before we move on to the feedback directly from the students from the horse's mouth, I would first like to, give you the feedback that I have received, and I have been able to go through the paper. Once I've not been able to sit on the paper and solve the questions, that is something that my team is doing to, be equipped for the analysis sessions and the general cutoff sessions. In the meantime that I'm taking this first impression session, my team is solving the paper. But I did take a look. I did speak to some 40 plus students. Sorry, I did speak to some 40 plus students who have come to the center and gave me their review. All right. So, I mean, nothing out of the blues. Let's begin with that. All right. It was a very typical CLAD paper. And when I say typical, there is always something which is surprising in the CLAD paper. All right. This year, in all probability, it was the GK section, which was not exactly very difficult, but what I'm hearing is bizarre or strange. And the DI section, which involved a lot of sorting of data and basically you were supposed to give more time than you would have expected to the DI section. Now, and the remainder sections pretty much straightforward is what I'm being told. Legal, I mean, we've gone through the sample papers already. The passages were based on conventional legal topics, and we've gotten three sample papers, and therefore the topics that were tested in the legal section, I wouldn't call them surprising at all, because if anything, the sample papers clearly hinted that these topics will be contemporary. So that was not a surprise. That said, the length was a bit bothersome for some students. They did feel that, keeping into consideration the fact that the DI, they invested more time than they had previously calculated they would dedicate to DI. GK being a little out of the blue and surprising, that also in a way took its toll. And finally, they realized that the legal section upon that was definitely not a breather in terms of how lengthy the questions were. So the feedback for the legal section was that pretty straightforward, in the sense that the sample paper had already hinted the sort of questions that we could expect in the legal section, and it was nothing different. And even in the mocks and even in the test series here at Clat Possible, we'd been regularly testing students on all these contemporary topics. But yes, length was bothersome for some of the students. The breathers definitely in the paper, the sections in the paper that sort of balanced it out were English and logic. All right, so pretty straightforward, run of the mill questions, nothing out of the blues, not a lot of reading involved, not too lengthy. So, this is the CLAT paper. So when I say that it's typical, obviously when people come back from the center, they're all flummoxed and they're all giving their feedbacks, and the one section which which is a bouncer gets to be discussed the most. But then it's always one section. I've been doing this job for, almost 10 years now. And there is always one section which is a bouncer. So in terms of that, in terms of the trend that the CLAT paper has followed, since 2008, pretty much nothing that is very different from what has not already happened in the past. One section which was a bouncer, one section that was relatively more difficult, two sections which balanced it out, and one section which was neutral. All right. So for this paper, the analysis would be something like this. The bouncer section was definitely GK, coupled with DI, which was more, sort of unexpected in terms of the time that you were supposed to allot to the DI section. The legal section was neutral. Some people found it lengthy. Some said, okay, like we'd become habitual solving so many questions in the mocks and solving the sample papers. And the two sections that balanced out the issues that you faced in the other three sections were perhaps the English and the logic section. So this is a general feedback for the paper. Again, the official cutoffs will be released, and before that, the unofficial cutoffs, the predicted cutoffs, that we've been working on, we'll be releasing that in some time. But I personally feel that there's not going to be much of a change, because in terms of attempt as well, the sort of feedback that I'm getting from my students, the attempts are pretty much in line with the number of attempts made by my students last year and last to last year as well. Since we had the first paper on the new pattern, I've been hearing the similar number of attempts by students, and I'm hearing the same numbers again this year as well. So if I were to guess, if the attempts are pretty much the same, I'm guessing the cutoffs will not change much. All right. The CLAT apparently has told aspirants that they'd be releasing the answer keys tonight or day after tomorrow at max. So if you wish to check, of course, you can check. But tonight, there's the FIFA final as well. So I'm guessing that a lot of you might be watching the final instead of, cross-checking your scores. But whatever you decide, just, be happy about the fact that you're done with the CLAT. And it's not in your hand now. It's not really in your hand. And either you be happy or you sulk. There's not going to be a lot of difference in the result. I would say might as well be happy and move on. All right. So this was the initial 10 minutes of bite that I had planned to give on the CLAT paper. And now, without wasting much time, I will move on to my students at the different centers and take their feedback. All right. So we have students from Patna, Chandigarh, Kanpur, Ranchi, Dehradun, Mumbai, and Pitampura, and Hazratganj, which is my headquarter. So let me start with my headquarter, which is Hazratganj. And guys, can you please make sure that all the lights are turned on? Your faces, the room is a bit dark. I can't really see your Shavik. Shavik, can you please make sure that all the lights are on? All right, so let's just generally start. So the pattern that we will follow is, first, let's take a general feedback. All right. So in a minute, try to give me a general feedback, a couple of sentences on GK, maybe a sentence on legal, logic, English, and then we'll move on to the section-wise feedback for the different components of the CLAT paper. So let's start with Hazratganj. Arnav, hi.
Am I?
Yes, you're audible, Arnav. Hi.
Yeah. So about the English section was pretty easy. Like the passages were of moderate length and the questions were pretty easy too. So we would expect that. About the GK section, GK was pretty much out of the box, and I guess many of us weren't prepared for this sort of a GK. So I'll rate it as a difficult section. And section, the questions, the length of the questions was pretty much, they were not. The questions were easy, but the length was pretty high. So I guess legal was moderate. Quant was pretty difficult. Like usually we are able to do 3 sets in about 12 to 15 minutes, but this section really took time. So I guess quant was difficult too. And logic was pretty easy. Logical was very straightforward. So that's my take on that.
All right. Moving on to Chandigarh. Hi, Chandigarh.
Hi, sir.
Hi, good evening.
How was the paper?
So if I have to describe it in one word, it was makhan. It was just like just like a Clat Possible amount, equal amount of difficulty, equal amount of lengthiness. Everything was amazing.
All right. So a quick one sentence each on every section that you faced in the CLAT today.
Yes, from Mook.
I think starting with English, as others have said, English was very easy. GK was a little over the top. Few difficult questions, fewer questions that we've done before.
Yeah, GK discussion is going to take most of the time today, so we'll discuss that in detail. Yes.
Legal was neutral. I think considerably same length as our mocks, and the level was also fine. CR was a breather for the entire mock, and DI was lengthy, of course.
All right. Okay, let's move on to Patna. Who do we have from the Patna Center?
So, Vibhuti here. Sir, I wholeheartedly agree with what others have said. English was easy. GK was a complete bouncer. The length in legal was something which I feel
was bothersome for a lot of people. Yes.
Struggling with it this time.
And what about logic and English? The easiest part, balanced out the paper?
DI, maths and DI, I felt that they were a little time taking considering the data aspects about where to place everything. Logic, I feel that it was just something that it was made to tangle, to consume your time and make sure that you're tangled there.
All right. Okay. Let us move next to the Kanpur Center. Who do we have from the Kanpur Center? Kanpur, just make sure your mic is turned on. Yes, general overview, quick, one sentence each about each section.
So English section was moderate, too easy, and the length was also really moderate. And the GK section was again out of the box, and really, like, some of the questions were very out of the box, like they were not even mentioned all over the year. Irrelevant questions. And for the legal section was moderate, as some questions were like very kind of what I can say tricky, but legal section was very doable, and it got very easy in the end. And it was lengthy. The main problem with this paper was that the legal section was really lengthy. And about logical reasoning was again that you might get stuck in one question or two questions or three questions. But again, it was moderate. And
all right.
About DI, I think we should.
Yeah, the data was a bit time consuming, but I think the questions were easy, just lengthy. It was the time, you had to manage your time.
The main goal was that the paper was moderate to easy, but the length was really like stretched out. So, but regarding the length of legal, I would say that it was pretty much predictable from the sample paper that the Clat had already given
True,
us.
true. At least for
So
the
it
topics,
was
I
pretty
would
much
say that it
easy.
was
So I
pretty
was
much
not predicting
predictable.
it very high. So it was pretty much
Yes.
easy and doable section. I mean, nothing was like out of the box. I found many of the people that were stuck in electoral bonds, but we have already done that in GK. So that was not a concern for that. We had already done. So it was like pretty much in the head what is electoral bonds, and we just have to read out the passage and then there were facts, and so it was like not much concern regarding legal. So yeah, GK was bouncer, but again, GK was bouncer for everyone.
Doable. You found the section doable. You felt that most of the topics, although not directly, but somewhere indirectly, you had touched upon these topics before.
Yes, for example, the surrogacy topic was already there in the CP Monks. We had done it approximately 2 to 3 times there. And the Criminal Act 2020, identification, that passage has come, I think so, in CP Monks many times. So that's why that was very easy.
All right. Save something for the detailed discussion on GK and we will get back to you. Let's come to Mumbai. Who do we have from Mumbai? Mumbai, Dehradun, please turn on your cameras and mics.
Hello, sir.
Hello, please turn on your camera, Dehradun Center.
Sir, we are not able to open the camera. You have to enable us to.
I don't have any power in my hand, bro. Anyway, I'm just going to ask my tech team. Anyway, start with the analysis. I think...
I'm not able to open the video. The host has to actually grant me a permission.
All right. I'm just going to ask the tech team. Lubna, who do we have at the Mumbai Center right now?
We have Dhun, we have Drishti, we have Shitish. There are 3 kids are here.
All right. Kshitij, give me a general overview of the paper.
Yes, I would say that English was good. Logic was was in fact easier than expected, in my opinion. While GK would have been, it was good for anyone who was like technically versed. But I would say that since most people were not expecting it, it may have been a bouncer for some, while it might have been easy for others.
How did you personally find the section? Were you able to attempt questions in GK?
Yes.
All right. Okay. And what about the other sections, Kshitij?
Legal was easier than expected, and like it came on the lines of the sample paper with like current topics more or less. Otherwise, maths I could not attempt like the entire section, but I found it to be easy enough. But it was long.
Legal, again, Kshitij, another feedback that I'm getting from a lot of people, and this is again a bit debatable, is that legal section was sort of bothersome in terms of length. So did you particularly face that issue as well? Finding the questions way too lengthy.
Certain passages were lengthy, but most of them were actually like easy, and some people who have like done like studied like 12th CBSE consumer protection, that like came from like exactly their home ground, because it was like all of those were from like NCRT.
Right. So that in a way helped you. All right, Dehradun, quick take.
Yes, sir.
Quick take on the paper, Dehradun.
Sir, legal was lengthy, but the topics were topics from the mocks. They were directly from the mocks. They were just the passage and the case studies was lengthy. And logical section was easy. GK was like a bit hard. Means GK was like something we were not able to do.
Expecting.
And English was easy. English was doable. And maths was able to do 10 questions, so it was good for me.
All right. Okay, great. And we have somebody from Pitampura as well. Pitampura, turn on your cameras and mic if you can. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Pitampura. Quick overview of the paper.
I think the paper conventional, but still the topics from which the questions were asked was still very prominent. They were important for, and so it was not particularly very difficult, but I would say yes, obviously it was unconventional, and I think DI was we had to make out what the data was saying. So there was no table given for us. We had to make out the details. So I think the paper was pretty moderate and very consistent, I would say.
All right. Okay. So I've spoken to the different centers. Sorry if I've missed one of these centers. I'm going to get back to you later. But again, like I said, the feedback that I'd given at the very onset of the session, most of the students who've given the exam are agreeing on it, which is GK bouncer. Some disagreement in the sense that some people feel that it was a lot out of the box. The degree of how out of the box and how unconventional and how out of the blues was it is a bit debatable, wherein students are telling me that no, maybe a lot of us did not directly touch those topics, but indirectly, in the discourse for the past 1 year that they've been preparing GK, they did come across these topics. And if you gave a proper look to the passages, then these questions weren't very, very technical and very tricky. So this is the GK feedback. Legal, again, there's a little bit of debate. Some people feel that if you've been preparing and writing the mocks and doing the sample papers, one consensus that we have is that it wasn't surprising. And thank God for the 3 sample papers that were released by the Clat. We literally sort of had an idea what would come in the legal section, and they did exactly the same thing. They tested you on conventional topics. So in terms of the topics covered, it was not surprising at all. But yes, there is a little bit of discussion and debate where some people found it a bit lengthy. Maybe that is also because in context of all the other sections, where 2 sections were a bit more difficult and a little unconventional and unorthodox, that took a toll on the legal section. And even when it was not actually very lengthy, they just found it to be lengthy because, like a lot of people are telling me that DI, they ended up spending more time. So if you attempted the DI section first and you move on to legal later, since you'd already wasted, or not exactly wasted, since you'd already dedicated some extra time to DI, that could have taken its toll, and you felt that, the legal section damn is quite lengthy. So that's a bit of a debate. Again, uniform consensus for the reasoning section and the logic section, where people are telling me that some questions in logic were meant to waste your time, to confuse you, to entangle you. But apart from that, most of the questions in logic were pretty run-of-the-mill and straightforward. And English is being least discussed. So I'm guessing that, everybody agrees that it was maybe the easiest section and the biggest breather in the Clat 2022 paper. All right. So now, without wasting much time, the central character or the hero section for the day, GK. How different did you find it? How did you approach the section? What were the topics that sort of startled you? And the one feedback that I'm getting for the GK section, and again, I would like to hear from you students, whether you'd agree with me or not, is that it was not as difficult as the section was rather bizarre. All right, like strange questions. And I'm getting examples where they asked you, which president's son played football for the US team and stuff like that, which is something that is more of trivia. And another surprising fact is that a lot of students are telling me that for some of these GK questions, they actually came across the answers by watching reels on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that, which is again something that is the first time that I'm hearing something like this. But then there is this student who tells me that one answer he got to know because he was watching the World Cup match, and the commentator in one of these matches had already talked about the answers to one of these questions, and then something on bitcoins and cryptocurrency was again somebody had watched something on reels. So a lot of sort of crazy reactions and responses that I'm getting. So let's start with Chandigarh. All right, so we have Avani, we have Gurmeet, we have I can't see your face, who's the one in blue jacket?
So
Ashmit, we have Ashmit. So let's start with you, Ashmit. Let's start with the GK section. Firstly, a general overview, and secondly, how did you personally tackle and how did you find the section? Examples of a few questions and stuff like that. Yes, Ashmit.
So I would totally agree that the section was bizarre. But if you look at it, the topics that generally came were ones that were relevant enough. But the questions that were asked pertaining to them, that was something that we had not covered that frequently. But still, you could pick out a few questions from like every passage and solve them. And somewhere you could make like intelligent guesses also, if it was possible.
Could you recollect some examples to sort of justify whatever you're saying, Ashmit?
Yes, so for example, if we have a look, we knew like in the sample papers also there were passages related to like agriculture, and the first like there was a passage in GK section about agriculture, but the scope that we expected agriculture to be, it was completely different. Like very different questions are asked, which we did not expect to come from agriculture. So that is what I feel.
All right. So basically, Ashmit, you telling me that the topics were expected, core topics, but the sort of questions that they asked were a bit out of the box. Yeah, like maybe last year where they asked you they have made a passage on the Russia-UN conflict and they're asking the spelling of the, president of Ukraine. So something like that.
Yes, sir, exactly.
All right. Avni, what's your take? GK.
Sir, I'd say I'd agree with Ashmit totally, because in those sample papers, we could, by the 3 sample papers, we know that these topics were important and the questions would be along these lines. But what exactly the paper did was they did choose the very relevant and the very conventional topics, and exactly questions were very bizarre, something that you would not really expect, but still there were some questions that were doable. Like many of those questions were already covered in CT classes and mocks and everything, but there were obviously many questions that were bouncers. The topics were relevant.
All right. Avni, give me an example of, the core topics we know. So crypto and, all these topics were pretty core. I would agree with you. What questions? Like if there's just give me an example of a topic that was core, but the question was rather strange.
So, for example, the FIFA topic, you not really expect, they combined AI and FIFA so well in those questions, and those questions were not basically you would expect from a passage on FIFA. What we would expect are the static stuff about FIFA and the organization. You would not expect the bands and those kind of questions in that.
No, that is true. So that was basically they picked up core topics and they asked you trivia questions.
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So this is Chandigarh's feedback. I am now gonna come to Hazratganj. Okay. Oh, hi Akshat. We have people from the past year as well. Hi Akshat. Hi Aditya.
Hi sir.
Yeah. So I wasn't told you guys are gonna be there. I don't know what to make you talk today, but I'm gonna figure out something in the middle of the session.
Sure, sir. Sure.
All right. Hazratganj.
So the review of the GK section to give is that the core concept.
Guys, by the way, I hope you're listening to what all the people from the other centers are talking. Right, all of you, are you able to come across the feedback given by people from the other centers as well?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. Hazratganj, yes, GK.
Sir, I would like to categorize the GK section in one word, that was trivial, because for the past 12 months, whatever GK that we have studied, which was core related geopolitics or whatever, it was not exactly related to that. And it's trivial or to, I would like to say, pop culture in nature. So for someone who has not been following a lot of pop culture or anything, might have been difficult. And it was a difficult
pop culture. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's it. It didn't ask anything serious or anything national level exam type, I would like to say.
All right. So, in a way, you say that you were disappointed. In a way, you were disappointed that they did pick up the important topics, but they asked very, I have to be politically correct here as well, but unimportant questions from those topics. All right. Let's come to Mumbai. Dhun and Kshitij. GK section. Let's start with you, Kshitij, and then we'll move on to Dhun.
With respect to GK, I would say the news was pretty relevant in terms of FTX. The FTX was a front page news, and same is true for the Lambda Sentient AI. That was a news around September, October, when this whole controversy happened. And like if you're reading through The Verge or something like that, so like those sources, then you got lucky. But that depends on everyone. I think some people disagree with me and take out pitchforks for saying this, but yeah.
So did you get lucky, Kshitij?
Yes. With respect to those questions, yes, but certain questions in agriculture went a little here or there. Yeah.
All right. What about you, Dhun?
Sir, I can just tell you, we've been arguing about was the GK section relevant or not for the entire session. But GK was not expected for me, even though it was like I mean, it could have gone worse for me, but I mean, it wasn't expected. It was a bouncer for me. So not that great, I can say. Yeah.
All right. So let's we've discussed a lot of
We,
negatives
we
about
have
the GK
Huzaifa
section.
also.
Yes,
Abhishek,
yes,
we have
Lubna.
Huzaifa online from his place, so you can take his review as well.
All right. Huzaifa, can you hear me? Huzaifa? All right, I think I've lost connection. I'm going to come back to you, Huzaifa. Kanpur, please turn on your cameras. Kanpur. Kanpur, Pitampura, one of you please turn on your cameras quickly.
GK.
Yes, GK.
Sir, I think GK, except for the one passage, the lambda passage, I think everything else was somewhat related to things that were happening around. Like, I think cryptocurrency, I think e-rupee was launched right now. So I think it was ancillary. And obviously, presidential elections we had. And
No, that was obviously, I mean, not the one thing. Okay, I'll stop you right there. So there are certain things about the GK section. Number one, obviously, some of the passages were very conventional and the questions were very straightforward and important. You know, these were not redundant or unimportant questions. And one of the passages that everybody is citing to sort of justify this thing that I just said was the presidential, vice presidential elections, which was pretty much straightforward. Another feedback that I'm getting about the GK section is that it went beyond the traditional 1.5 year cycle. So I don't exactly remember who, but somebody tells me that there were questions on events that happened somewhere around 2020, 2021. Now, I need somebody to verify that. Did that actually happen, and how did you tackle that? So let's come to the gun center. Yes, Hazratganj. But because I think I got this feedback from Hazratganj that some of the questions did go beyond the traditional cycle of 1.5 years, and you were basically tested on topics which date back to almost 2020, 2021. Can somebody give me a feedback on this, Hazratganj?
Sir, could you please ask me to what about the feedback, sir?
So I'm saying that I was told by some kids at Ganj that some of the questions actually went beyond the traditional Clat cycle of 1.5 years, and you had passages from topics that were sort of in news in 2020 or 2021.
Sir, yes, sir. I would like to second that because from a general student's point of view, some good study would evolve around 12 to 14 months if you study. And that they went beyond with some questions like FTX and what else? Nobel Prize winners of 2020 and traditional concepts.
Okay. All right. Chandigarh, is this feedback verifiable? Chandigarh.
Sir, we say specifically question number 54 and 58. The question number 54 asked you the Nobel Prize for 2020. And also the question number 58 was related to AI, but something that happened in 2021. So they did pick the obviously very core topics, but then the time was also something they picked from 2020 or 2021.
All right. So again, like, you know, if you've been preparing for GK, traditionally we're told to, cover topics that sort of happened in the past, let's say 14 to 16 months. Then how exactly did you come across this? Was this because of your own interest in these topics? Or did you sort of extend the 14-month period to, let's say, 2 years, and which is why you were able to answer some of the questions? Let's come to that then.
Right. So basically, one thing which we did was that we didn't study GK in isolation, like just relying on one sort of compendiums or some newspaper. Instead, instead of restricting your sources, doing GK holistically really helped in this kind of exam, because again, topic, like a lot of assorted kind of questions were asked to a pertinent topic, which were sometimes not very much related to that topic. But again, if you didn't restrict yourself to one particular source or one compendium, so I think you could have managed it. And also a lot of intelligent guesses both.
All right. What do you have to say about it? Patna. Let's come to Patna. What do you have to say about it? for some of these topics that were they were prominent in 2021. Look, anyway, I wouldn't say that this was out of syllabus in any way, because the syllabus very clearly mentions that current topics of historical importance will be a part of the paper. So even if something is important or something is being lightly discussed in 2022, but then, it is being discussed and there is something of historical importance that's already happened pertaining to that topic, it can very well be a part of your paper. So all those who feel that this was a bit out of syllabus, I think that would be the wrong approach. So Patna, what would you say about these questions that were prominent in 2020 and not so prominent maybe in 2022? And how did you prepare? How did you come across these questions, or did you leave the passage?
Sir, I wouldn't say that I left the passage, but I have this very strong feeling that this time the paper, they have just given you a small string in GK, and then they are pulling you and they expect you to pull that string to whatever extent possible. So what I feel is that the entire thing is not just about what is relevant and what is not relevant, but about how deep you have gone in everything. It's not about just what's relevant, but how deep. Like with CBDC, central bank digital currencies, the technology behind it, and what other prominent things have happened in the recent past with it. So that's just they have given a crypto string and they expect us to pull on it.
All right. Okay. Let's come to, so we've discussed a lot of negatives, and of course, this is common consensus that, there were a lot of bouncer questions. Let's come to passages that you found were pretty straightforward and easy. And again, something that I would like to discuss again, how many of you started with the GK section? Let's start. Chandigarh, anybody who started with the GK section?
So I did.
So did I.
And did that set you back in some way?
Sir, if I wouldn't have been trained in this and motivated well enough, I would have faced that problem. But I knew that, at least from the sample papers, I knew that some questions would be a bouncer. So I was mentally prepared that even if GK section did not go well, I don't want to mess up other sections. So I wasn't really affected by that.
All right, mentally prepared. Ganj, how many of you started with the GK section? Arav?
Sir, I started with the GK section and I was kind of...
So starting with this bouncer section, how did it generally impact your paper?
Sir, it didn't have much impact because I was mentally prepared. I was like, I have to attempt GK. How much I know I will put in all of my efforts in that paper. And I knew that there could be many questions I could be doing, but that does not matter. If it is tough for everybody, it is tough for me.
Exactly. Thank you for realizing that, Soumya. This is something that I keep telling students. If you've been scoring well in the mocks, if you should trust your preparation. And if you find a section difficult, then instead of getting demoralized, you should understand that if you are finding it difficult, every goddamn aspirant in the country is finding that difficult. So that's a very good approach, Soumya.
I was like, I have to just squeeze out marks from the GK question, whatsoever I could squeeze out of it. So I tried my best.
And how did it go? How did it go? How did it end?
It was average. I attempted 20 to 22 questions.
All right, which brings me to the next part, Soumya. Tell me about, we've discussed a lot of negatives. Give me a few positives of the GK section. What was something that was a breather? What was something that was absolutely expected and you were easily able to answer?
The positives were few, but the agriculture section of the GK was moderate. I could attend good number of questions from that. I think 4 or 5 questions from every passage were good.
All right. Okay. Kanpur, what were the questions that you found the easiest in the GK section? The passages that you felt were the most doable and expected? Okay, Kanpur. All right, I'm going to come to Ranchi. So now this year, we've had one of our in-house faculties take the Clat paper as well. And we'd be joined by Shubham. Shubham is a graduate of National University, Jodhpur, right, Shubham?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Shubham joined us last year, and he's been doing a stellar job taking workshops and mentoring students for the legal reasoning section. So since he's been teaching students for this paper, for the GK section, for the legal section, would handle doubts on logic as well. He has a general idea about the entire paper. He's been mentoring people for this paper. and he attempted the paper as well. All right, he attempted the paper. He attempted the paper as well. So, Shubham, I would now like you to have sort of a monologue and tell me everything that you have to say about this paper.
Okay, so most of the students have already pointed this out, that GK was like a curveball in the paper. But apart from that, in my opinion, the legal and the English portions were fairly easy. Although a bit lengthy, but they were fairly easy. GK was a bit of a googly. Again, your quants was also a bit lengthy. But apart from that, I can analyze paper to be from easy to moderate level, apart from GK section,
All
which
right.
was
So I think since
kind
you're
of a
faculty,
bouncer.
you are calling it easy to moderate. The students are more on the lines of moderate to difficult.
Exactly. So that will happen. That difference will happen. But I get the point.
Right,
the paper
right.
was extremely lengthy, though, especially the legal section, because all the legal passages were current topics and none of the traditional topics. So that was something which might have surprised
like you
students.
don't get that deja vu feeling. Like you've done a lot of contemporary topics in the mocks, traditional core topics in the mocks, and which is why, if there was a passage on vicarious liability, then you wouldn't have to give as much time to the passage when compared to, let us say, something which is very contemporary.
Exactly. But here also, like, our mocks really helped in my understanding also, because we had covered a lot of these contemporary topics either in legal or in GK also. So for example, the criminal procedure identification code passage, the law which was passed recently, in spite of coming in legal, it really helped. We expected that it will come in GK, but it came in legal, and that helped a lot of students. So yeah, we basically covered that ground, and that, in my opinion, helped a lot of students to, wrap it up quickly as compared to others.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Shubham. So I think we've spent enough time on on GK, just as you spent it in the Clat paper. So let's just stop the discussion here. The next controversial section, or rather, should I call it a semi-controversial section in the paper, was DI, which again, traditionally speaking, Clat aspirants, are sort of, by default a little underprepared, because it's the least important section. And I mean, come on, a lot of us actually plan to pursue law because maths is not our forte. So the feedback that I get is that there was a lot of sorting. Now, I don't know. I've not exactly been able to gather the gist of what I'm being told. But what I'm being told is that, there was a lot of sorting to do. And the one common consensus, of course, here is that you ended up spending way more time as compared to what you had originally planned. All right. So the DI section, the exact issues and difficulty, let's come to Pitampura. Yes, Pitampura. Do we have anybody from the Connaught Place Center? Can you please identify anybody from the Connaught Place Center? All right, not yet. I understand. I mean, the distances in Mumbai and Delhi are crazy, so I understand.
Exactly.
All right. So let's move on to Hazratganj. All right, let's go to Hazratganj. Yes, Hazratganj, DI section. CP Hazratganj. I don't know why am I losing my connection. Dehradun, can we come to Dehradun?
Hi, sir.
Hi, Dehradun. Yes, so DI section. Your general feedback, like I said, sorting was a problem. You ended up devoting more time than planned. Yes.
So maths was very hard, and the problem was that the legal section was very lengthy. So I had a very little time left by the end of the paper. So about like 5 minutes. But I guess I compensated for those marks that I would have normally gained in the math section in like logical and GK, which were quite simple for me, perhaps.
All right. Next, moving on to Mumbai. Yes, Mumbai. What about the DI section? Were you able to solve the questions? If you were able to sort the facts, were they very solvable? And the major problem or hiccup was sorting of data. What was it like?
Yes, sir. I mean, it was in general lengthy. So the amount of time that I had given to quant, so that all of my other sections were satisfied. I think so. It wasn't. I wasn't able to complete the whole, like the full quant section. But I mean, once you sort out the data, once you find out, like after you go to solving, it's not very hard. It's doable, but it's lengthy. So that's where I think the marks are usually gone,
All
because
right.
it's not.
So data sorting was the biggest hurdle.
Yes, sir.
Chandigarh, would you agree?
Yes, the DI section was very lengthy. I would say that the first passage that we had on average grades, we had done like a similar question in classroom. So that was easier for me. But I would say that it was time.
All right. Chandigarh, I think I lost connection and you're not really audible at this point in time. So I think the feedback is pretty clear. The feedback is pretty clear. Most of you were not able to complete, but then the ones who were able to complete the DI section are telling me that data sorting was the hurdle. And once you were past that, the questions or getting to the right options was fairly easy. Patna, would you agree with this feedback that we are getting? Patna? Josefa, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Josefa. So DI section, your quick feedback.
So it was difficult.
All right. Okay. So were you able to attempt all the questions?
No, sir, I wasn't able to attempt all the questions.
All right, Josefa. All right. Okay. So this is the feedback that I'm getting from a lot of students. So, I mean, I don't know how much we can discuss this section when majority of you were not able to attempt the questions. That's all right. But I think the consensus is pretty clear and the feedback is pretty unanimous across. Moving on to the legal section, again, the only moot point here is some people felt that it was lengthy and some people felt that it was in line with what the sort of questions they had been practicing. And some people definitely feel that there should have been more questions on core topics. Because, you know, if all the passages are on contemporary topics, then by default, you end up, you know, devoting more time to the section. Because for contemporary topics, like I already discussed with Shubham, you have that deja vu feeling and you feel that, you know, I've come across this passage before as well on multiple occasions, and which is why you can just skim through it. So quick take. Let's start with Josefa only. Josefa, your take on the legal section.
So I think it was on lines of what was to be expected, especially with the Clat Possible mock, sir. Because a kind of, in my opinion, because I was also a student of other classes, their legal section wasn't in line with what Clat today asked. So
All right.
shout out to Clat Possible for this.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying that, Josefa. And this is again feedback that I'm getting from a lot of students, that the mocks and the sample papers combined, irrespective of the section being entirely on conventional topics and, you know, no core topics, nobody found it surprising, because the combination of the mocks here at Clat Possible and the sample papers worked really well. And I would want some of you to sort of elaborate on that. So Hazratganj, please turn on your mic and camera. All right, who else do we have? All right, okay. Ranchi. Yes, Ranchi. So, Shubham, the feedback is that combining the mocks and the sample papers, legal was nothing that was surprising for at least the students from our ecosystem.
Yes, sir. Totally agree here.
All right.
We have a couple of students also here with me. This is Azam and this is Ayush. And they will also let you know about how the GK section was.
Yes.
I will argue that GK was a little bouncy. It was not expected at all. Like that but more like who would have heard the recent type of news of like Sam Bankman type would have easily answered that. And when it comes to legal, then which was like no convention topic came, but it all like it came from like a GK topics like a GK. So if you have read a newspaper and editorial and like sites like live law, you won't feel any that much of a problem.
All
And
right, all right.
like English was easy, and English and logical was pretty much easy. And DI was a bit long, but it was solvable if some time given to that.
All right, okay, okay. So this is, I guess, legal and all is pretty sorted. Moving quickly to the logic section, which majority of you agree was pretty straightforward. But if, let's say, on gunpoint, I ask you to say something apart from the fact that it was pretty straightforward and simple, what would you say? Let's start with Chandigarh. Don't tell me it was simple, straightforward. You have to say one thing different about the logic section. What would you say? Chandigarh, let's start with you.
It was a cute little section, like no complexities involved, and you could like it was like a booster.
That's the same thing, Ashmit. Come on, you have to say something different. You can't rephrase.
A confidence building kind of section that like compensated for whatever mess had been created in GK.
But Ashmit, some students are telling me, Ashmit and all the other students there, some students are telling me that maybe a couple of passages were confusing and entangling and purposefully a part of an otherwise easy section.
Sir,
So that's more of a person. Did you come across any such passage?
Sir, not really. At least to me, the whole CR section was pretty doable, and it was something that you could easily manage in the time frame also. And the passages weren't something that you had to especially comprehend. They were really like story based, and other passages also like you could easily just give them a read and solve the question.
There's topics like the passages, the topic around which the passage was written, they were very general. And so it was not confusing or that you had to like go again. Even like if you had not read the passage and you were just using your common sense, you could have attempted all the questions. CR was that straightforward, and that's why it's straightforward.
All right. So basically, you were bitten by almost no passage. Everything was breeze. What about you, CP Tampura? One feedback in isolation that I've gotten was that some passages were maybe a bit entangling and purposefully placed to sort of, disturb you in an otherwise easy section. True, untrue, and why? Pitampura.
I would say kind of not true, not even untrue, because there was some, if I was going by the passage, not just skipping to the questions and reading them and then doing the passage. So in understanding the passage, it took me a bit of time. I would say I would stand in middle. There was no such thing for me as, difficult, because if I was able to understand it, I could do it. But I would say it took a bit of time.
All right. Okay. So again, that was logic. And English is by far, like I already said, the biggest breather and as straightforward as it could get. Anybody who would disagree or anybody who would want to say something about the English section apart from the fact that it was by far the easiest section? Would you agree? Was it the easiest section, Chandigarh? Easiest section in the paper, English?
Sir, personally, I would say that CR was actually easier than English. Not that English was difficult also, but English, at least for some people who do not really understand the story-based passages, it could be a tricky section, but in general, the passages were again very easy to comprehend, and there were also vocabulary-based questions, but at least the tone-based and main idea-based questions were absent, which was kind of not exactly a shocker, but something new.
All right. Okay. All right. Mumbai, Josefa, Kshitij, Dhun, English easiest or logic easier than English? What would you say?
Logic was easier.
Yes, sir. Logic.
In fact, ironically, I spent less time in CR than in English.
All right. And traditionally speaking, obviously, you would always end up spending more time in logic, Josefa, but in the CLAT paper, that sort of turned around.
Yes.
All right. All right, all right. That is great. That is great. So I think this is enough about the discussion. The last couple of minutes I'm going to take talking to you about any glitches that you face, your exam hall experience, because a lot of my students from different centers in Lucknow did not give me the most robust and positive feedback. And obviously one problem was that your time to fill the OMR and everything was included in the 2 hours that you had to attempt the paper, which again shouldn't have been a part of it. Next, I've also been told that, there were some very talkative invigilators, and there was a lot of chaos and a lot of cross-talking that was happening, which is again a very, very sorry thing to happen, and perhaps we might as well raise a complaint about it. But generally, any out of the blue exam hall experience that you would want to talk about? Anyone can volunteer? All right, I don't think you want to talk about it because there are bigger things to worry and the match is starting in some time. I get that. All right, so we are also joined by a couple of our past year students. All right, so we are also joined by a couple of our past year students, and we have Akshat with us, and who I can't see the camera. Who else? Who all do we have? Akshat, are you there? All right. Okay. All right. All right. Anyway, so I think that's pretty much it from my side, guys. And like I always tell you, after the AILET paper, I tell you to just chill and forget and move on and focus on the CLAT. Now that the CLAT has already happened, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe like still chill and move on and, leave everything in God or whoever you believe in. And just make sure that, just make sure that now whatever results you have, you speak to your mentors, you speak to your center managers, you get in touch with us so that irrespective of what your results are, you don't make a decision which you might regret in the future. That's the only piece of advice that I have. For the rest of you, you're done. Your cycle has ended. All right. Congratulations, guys. Congratulations, and trust your preparation. Something good should happen. And even if something great doesn't happen, this is not the end. There are always options in life, which of course we will discuss once the results are out and we conduct our online YouTube counseling sessions. That was all from my side. Thank you so much, students. You can now go party, enjoy, have some fun. And you worked really hard for this paper. You worked really, really hard for the past 1 year. And some students for 2 years. And there have been students who've been preparing for this even for 3 years. So chill now and you finally get time to rest. All right. Not true for students who have their board examinations in 6 months, but rest of you, of course, yes. So bye-bye from my side, and keep tune in for the other sessions that we will be holding today, which is the CLAT overview session, where you would come to know about the cutoffs and section-wise, specific section-wise analysis for the different sections of CLAT 2022. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much.